Pero coño! Ah! Okay, this is long. I don't think we'll watch this whole thing, but...
Biggest dream for your character in the next few years? I say I would like to have them in a kind of Rainbow Land, a theme park in Rome.
A Winx theme park? They were gonna make a Winx theme park? Abandoned?
In 1995, Italian animator Eugenio Straffi founded a small animation studio he called Rainbow. In its early years, the company kept the lights on by completing commission work for larger, more established productions until in the early 2000s they began to secure just enough funds to create the first of their original works, including the CD-ROM turned animated series Tommy and Oscar and later the series Prezzemolo. And although their projects were almost always well received, none of them really became big enough to truly give Rainbow Studios their breakthrough, until in 2004 when everything changed.
Winx.
On the 28th of January 2004, Rainbow released Winx Club, their
Winx
magical
Club!
girl fantasy series following the lives and adventures of Bloom,
Winx
Stella,
is Italian?
Flora, Tecna,
Yes, Winx is Italian.
Aisha, and Musa as they attend the Althea School for Fairies and keep the magic dimension safe. And unlike Rainbow's prior ventures, the series became an immediate smash hit. Almost overnight, Winx Club became one of the most successful Italian media properties ever produced, airing in more than 130 countries and becoming a multi-million-dollar franchise. In fact, the series was so successful that Eugenio Straffi became something of a national icon, with Italian publications quickly dubbing him the Italian
But Musa was my favorite.
Walt Disney. After all, the
She
two
was
had
a
a lot
fairy
in
of
common.
music,
Both came from
after
humble
all.
backgrounds
Of
and found a
course
love
she
for
was my
drawing and
favorite.
cartoons at an early age. Both went on to establish their own animation studios and achieve their first mainstream success in their late 30s, and both are widely considered pioneers of their home country's animation industry. But there was one thing that Walt Disney had that Eugenio Straffi notably didn't. A theme park.
Disney World.
In 2009, Eugenio Straffi wanted a theme park. He had actually wanted one for a couple of years by then, basically from the moment Winx became a phenomenon.
Wait,
but it wasn't until the end of the decade that he actively began working towards making the dream a reality. In 2008, he licensed the Winx Club brand to the Aquafan water park in Niccione, Italy, allowing the park to hold a dedicated Winx Day to celebrate the Winx magazine's 50th issue. Attendees were able to
Bro wanted a theme park. The Winx just became a thing like not a few years ago and he already wanted a theme park, bro.
The Winx watched them perform and receive free merchandise, with an impressive 6,500 visitors traversing to the park for the occasion. And that incredibly high number, combined with the domestic popularity of Rainbow's other properties like Monster Allergy and the then newly released Huntic Secrets and Seekers, led to Straffi finally deciding to go all in on a dedicated Rainbow Studios theme park. But as it turns out, creating a theme park is a little bit harder than one might think. Building a new park from scratch requires a whole lot of money, a whole lot of land, and a whole lot of boring paperwork and legal stuff. But you know what doesn't require as much boring legal stuff? Licensing out your properties to an already existing
Did you guys ever watch this one show? Oh my god, I just remembered it the other day. I was thinking about Angel's Friends. Did anybody ever watch Angel's Friends?
Exist theme park. And luckily for Rainbow and Eugenio
Does anybody even remember
such an
Angel's
opportunity
Friends?
just happened to be waiting for them. All the way back in 2001, plans were announced for a new theme park to be built just outside of Rome.
Oh my
Originally
god.
called Terra Magica and later renamed Wonder Rome, the park was going to be Italy's answer to Disneyland or Universal Studios,
with Angel's
a
Friends.
shopping district and huge park full of distinctly themed areas and attractions. Construction finally began in 2005, and then it abruptly stopped. For unknown reasons, the park's progression quickly came to
the park started in 2005.
areas and attractions. Construction finally began in 2005, and then it abruptly stopped.
What?
For unknown reasons, the park's progression quickly came to a halt, and its opening date was continuously pushed back until there was just no date at all, leaving the park's future nothing short of uncertain, but leaving an opening for Rainbow to swoop in. The studio purchased a 10% share of the park, and
So
granted them a
somebody
10-year
was making a
licensing
park,
agreement
they
that
didn't make
allowed
it, and
Rainbow's
then
properties to be
Rainbow
used
bought
in
it.
attractions, shows, and promotional material. And in return, the studio gained significant creative influence over the park's design while helping pay for its development. Terra Magica and Wonder Rome were no more, but Rainbow Magic Land was born. And so construction began again.
Oh
Development
my
group
God.
Projekt was brought on to completely overhaul the park's previous plans, and very quickly it was decided that a major feature of this new version of the park would be a land dedicated to Winx Club. Early concept art
Winx
showed a
Club.
life-size version of the Althea School for Fairies standing dramatically over a large water feature, with promotional material describing it as the
Althea!
heart of the entire park. And alongside it would be a Winx attraction and collection of buildings not unlike those seen in the Winx world of Magics. It was ambitious, and given the park's troubled history, for many it also felt a little too good to be true. The park was set to open
I bet, honestly, like, if they would have put it in Universal, that shit would have thrived, bro.
in 2011, a full decade after it was first announced to the public and 6 years after construction first began. A timeline
That
that
shit would've
rightfully
thrived,
led
bro.
to skepticism. So going into the park's opening, the question was simple. Would Rainbow Magic Land live up to its own hype? Or was it a domino-level disaster waiting to happen? Welcome
you
to
tell
the
me.
Winx Club theme park.
2011.
Rainbow Magic Land was officially inaugurated on the 25th of May 2011, and although the park wouldn't officially open its doors to the public until the next day, the inauguration ceremony still gave excited fans a taste of what was to come. Attended by Eugenio Straffi, park officials, and politicians,
Yeah, I
the
feel like
ceremony featured a performance by the park's newly
if they would have
assembled
put it like,
entertainment
if they
team,
would have
which
put it in
notably-
like Universal Studios or some shit, I feel like Winx, man, Winx Club makes me so sad because Winx Club was so good and it had so much potential. And there was just so much to it, and they just, oh my god.
included 6 face characters
They
of the
just
Winx.
fucked it.
They wore never before seen Believix costumes, coinciding with the then most
Believix
recent season 4,
costumes!
and performed a selection of songs from both the Magic Land original soundtrack and the Winx show. The performance was relatively short, but more
Oh my
importantly, as
God!
it came to its close, a very Italian ribbon was cut, and after nearly a decade of development hell, Rainbow Magic Land was officially open for business.
Wow.
So let's go back in time to a day at Rainbow Magic Land in 2011. As guests entered through the park's large decorative gates, they were led into a Main Street-style avenue lined with shops, restaurants, and themed buildings. Here, guests could buy their Rainbow Magic Land merch or sit around small gardens to escape the heat, but further along, the street gradually
Whoa.
widened, the surrounding structures fell away, and the path opened up to reveal a massive artificial lake, at the end of which stood a life-size recreation of the Althea School for Fairies. The
Oh
concept
my
art come
God.
to life. But from this central area, visitors looking for their share of thrills might go left, towards the park's drop tower or spinning roller coaster. But those
Whoa.
with taste, also known as those attending for the Winx experience, would go to the right. They would traverse beneath the park's largest roller coaster shock and pass by 2 small dining locations before they were eventually welcomed by the first Winx attraction, and effectively, the entrance to the Winx Club theme park. It was a large cage
Whoa.
structure topped with statues of the 6 Winx fairies posed mid-flight against a large rainbow. It was Believix, later renamed
Believix!
Peanut Winx. This attraction was a suspended dark ride where guests were invited to, quote, climb aboard the magical leaves boat and let the Winx guide you as you explore the lush forest, meet legendary creatures, and witness spectacular battles. And that description was relatively accurate. In reality, guests would board a floral ride vehicle and travel through a sequence of fantasy environments decorated with statues of the Winx.
Oh my God,
the
it's so
ride
cute.
opened with a pixie village where guests were welcomed by Bloom before they moved through a forest scene alongside Flora and an underwater world with Aisha.
Okay, let's be honest, bro. These statues, bro.
By Bloom before they move through a forest scene alongside Flora and an underwater world with Aisha. This
Let's
portion
just
of
be
the
honest
ride
with
is where a
ourselves.
majority of the fantastical creatures were located, including sirens emerging from clams, an octopus and/or
is
squid
looking
and/or
kinda rough.
kraken, and a collection of small seahorses. But the ride would then exit the water,
Imagine if
and Musa
it's
would
Musa, my favorite. Why they made her? She's looking kind of rough, bros. She's looking kind of
guests
rough.
towards a sort of land of light, where Stella greeted them and they continued over crystals and through caves. Before finally, guests would meet Tekna and pass
Oh
over
God,
the final
Tekna.
show scene, a campsite where Winx dolls were suspended using literal fishing line. Riders would then depart and exit a campsite where Winx dolls were
Oh my God.
suspended using literal fishing line.
God
Riders
damn.
would then depart and exit via the left
They
side
just
of the
didn't have the
attraction,
budget,
where
bros.
directly to their left was the Piccolo Teatro, also known as the Children's Theatre, which will be more important later, so remember it. But after enjoying a ride on Pianeta Winx, Winx fans would continue to travel anti-clockwise and into Il Regno de Piccolo, which roughly translates to the Small Kingdom, and was a children's sub-area themed primarily to Pop Pixie. For those unaware, the Pixies were a
Oh.
magical creature introduced in Winx Club's second
Guys, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I'm sure tons of people like the Pixies. I really didn't give a fuck about the fucking Pixies. I didn't care about the Pixies. They were cute, but I didn't care,
they would
bro.
actually receive their own short-lived spin-off called Pop Pixie.
Not
the
Pop
show began
Pixies.
airing in 2011, not long before the park opened, and as a result, this Toontown
I just didn't give a fuck about the Pixies, bro.
Huge cross-promotion for
I didn't
the
like
then
them.
new series. Designed as a sort of walkthrough environment, the land invited guests to explore colorful pixie houses and storybook-style buildings, while also offering a selection of family-friendly attractions, including but not limited to Pop Flowers, a spinning teacup ride, Popala, a balloon race ride, Pixie River, a small river rapids ride, Pop Tower, a pull-up tower, the Pixie Train, a small train, obviously, Pop Site, a Ferris wheel, Elf Forest, some bumper cars, and finally, Pop Race and Play, Pop Site, a Ferris wheel, Elf Forest.
Oh my god, those cars.
Some bumper cars.
That is horrifying. That's
and
horrifying.
Pop Race and Pop
I hate
Ride,
it.
2 aerial carousel rides, most of which were built by European ride manufacturers. And finally, El Reino de Piccolo also included a large restaurant, which for some reason wasn't called the Fruity Music Bar, but was instead called the Magic Station Bar, meaning guests could fuel up before they left the children's area and continued towards arguably the Winx attraction, and without a doubt, the main reason why Winx fans wanted to visit the park at all. Because after following a short pathway, guests would be led to the 36-meter tall Alfea Castle. A castle that, considering budget and the limitations of reality, was impressively accurate to the series. Just don't pay too much attention to its color. Visitors were free to explore the Alfea courtyard, which was decorated with small gardens and surrounded by the school's iconic rounded windows and balconies.
Wow.
And of course, front and center was the main section of the castle, complete with its large domed roof and grand staircase. Meanwhile, inside Alfea, the main building held a planetarium attraction that showcased a rotating selection of 4D films, while the right side of the building contained a 2-story Winx gift shop, selling everything from Winx shirts to dolls. The store was also decorated with statues of the Winx, cardboard cutouts, and some photo opportunities, including a car prop and flower columns. But back outside, there was more to do than just wander around, because of course, live shows and entertainment were a major part of the Winx experience at Rainbow Magic Land. And here, on the steps of Alfea, guests could catch the first of the many Winx live shows. I Love Winx was a short 5 to 10 minute performance that saw the Winx welcoming guests to the park and performing
Winx Club!
songs from the show's soundtrack, primarily from season 4 and prior, though over time, both the setlist and the costumes of this show would be updated or altered to better reflect the newer seasons. On special occasions, the original park-exclusive Believix costumes would be swapped out for Sirenix, before both were ultimately replaced by Bluemix in 2016.
Oh
and
my
for especially
god,
lucky
Bluemix.
fans who attended the park during the Winx magazine parties, the show could even feature a rare Farragonda face character, who would then hand out gifts after the show ended. Though with all that said, I Love Winx was never designed to be a major theatrical event.
Oof, that Farragonda wig though. That Farragonda wig is looking... Holy shit.
Though with all that said, I Love Winx was never designed to be a major theatrical event. In fact, it presented itself more like a flash mob than it did an actual production. So for fans looking for something more, Rainbow Magic Land's main Winx live show was Winx is Magic or Winx Live, a daily show that was performed at the Piccolo Theatre, also known as the theatre I told you to remember earlier. Did you remember it? This show was described by the theme park as an episode of Winx Club come to life, with the Winx singing, dancing, and fighting off the wizards of the Black Circle. Although the last was through a screen, the wizards weren't actually portrayed by live actors, which is unfortunate. But like I Love Winx, over time this show also went through a number of variations, including a Christmas version performed in the planetarium, a summer festival version staged at the Bay Stage, and reportedly even a Halloween version in 2014, though no footage of that last one seems to exist. Furthermore, in 2015, Winx Live was also updated to match the then current era of the series, with the Wizards of the Black Circle storyline being dropped and the Winx appearing in Bluemix and Season 7 outfits. And finally, during special occasions and when there was high demand, the Grand Teatro, which was typically reserved for large-scale performances like Aladdin and Romeo and Juliet, would be used for Winx in concert. This was another showcase of Winx songs, but with props, backup dancers, and a much more elaborate set. And in at least one special performance, an appearance of the incredibly rare Winx in concert live costumes. Of course though, theme park entertainment doesn't just include shows. Since the opening of Disneyland in 1955,
they had the face characters walking
characters have
around.
become extremely popular all around the world, and depending on who you ask, a defining element of the theme park experience. And Rainbow Magic Land, like many international theme parks, embraced this tradition wholeheartedly. During their time at the park, guests could meet the Winx as walk-around face characters, who appeared occasionally in the theme park's parade, and held daily meet and greets at the Althea Castle and near the park's entrance. And while initially all 6 of the Winx girls appeared regularly, the number of characters present gradually decreased over time, both in performances and meet and greets, until eventually guests would be lucky if they could even meet 3. Which, in hindsight, this reduction was one of the earliest indicators that the Winx theme park and Rainbow Magic Land as a whole was beginning to struggle.
Oh no. The downfall. In
2018, reports began to surface that Rainbow Magic Land was not in a great economic position, and was in fact in severe financial debt. Attendance simply hadn't met expectations in its first 7 years, leading to growth attempts stalling in 2016 and no new attractions being added to the park since 2013. Investors got cold feet, profits slowed, and unfortunately it wasn't exactly a secret. The park had fallen into a noticeable state of disarray, and nowhere was this more evident than in the Winx land. Props had begun to disappear from the Pianetta Winx ride, and it became plagued with lighting and sound problems. Over in the Pop Pixie subland, many of the Popala hot air balloons wouldn't rise, and on one of the 2 aerial carousels, 2 of the ride vehicles had to be left empty or the ride simply wouldn't operate. Not to mention the magical station bar was quite literally falling apart. I'm not exaggerating, it had half a roof. And of course there was Althea. What was originally a beautiful and lively building had begun to peel and discolor. The towers had become overgrown with weeds, and the entire building had developed a thin layer of what was quickly identified as mold. A problem that could also be seen on the Winx statues outside Pianetta Winx. But that's not all. Inside Althea, by 2017, Flora had lost her hand and the entire top floor of the building was completely blocked off, with much of the Winx merchandise being replaced with generic Rainbow Magic Land products, leaving the Winx store scarily empty. Simply put, the writing was on the wall. right next to the mold. Rainbow Magic Land couldn't afford or didn't want to afford upkeep of the park, especially the Winx land. Though it's also worth acknowledging that at the same time, Winx was undeniably declining in popularity, with budget cuts negatively impacting Season 7 and Nickelodeon all but abandoning the franchise. So it's certainly a possibility that that also played a role in the land's deterioration. But regardless, the Winx theme park's decline had reached a point of no return, and what followed felt almost inevitable.
That's so sad.
On the 21st of December 2018, it was officially announced that Rainbow Magic Land had been purchased by Pillarstone Italy, an investment firm specializing in distressed assets. And less than a year later, Pillarstone announced that they would be terminating the park's licensing agreement with Rainbow 2 years early. The park would be renamed simply Magic Land, its logo would be redesigned, and by the 2020 season, all traces of Rainbow Studios properties, save for the Huntic 4D attraction, would be completely removed. Rainbow Magic Land was entering a new era, but Rainbow wouldn't be a part of it. The Pop Pixie subland was the first to disappear, with almost every attraction in El Reino de Piccolo being either removed or stripped of its theming by April of 2019. The land would later reopen for the season as Tonga, a much smaller jungle-themed area with an additional large log flume. A few months later, Althea Castle was surrounded by construction fencing and fabric privacy screens, with only a narrow pathway left open to allow guests access to the planetarium. The once open courtyard where Winx shows and meet and greets had taken place for years was sealed off entirely. And by the start of the 2020 season, the transformation was complete. The Winx Club theme park was officially no more. Althea Castle had become Cosmo Academy, and Pianetta Winx was rethemed into Gadabaleno Time Machine, an entire themed land, once the heart of Rainbow Magic Land, reduced to a memory. Or so it seemed. Winx, we're back again. On the 3rd of January 2025, Magic Land posted to their Instagram announcing the launch of ticket sales for the then upcoming season. The caption read, "Get ready for an unforgettable 2025, packed with new features at Magic Splash and a long-awaited return to Magic Land." And then a fairy emoji. Under regular circumstances, the post likely would have come and gone without much thought. But the fairy emoji, paired with the phrasing long-awaited return, immediately gained the attention of Winx fans. Because with the context that Winx was being rebooted in 2025, there was really only one conclusion
and the reboot wasn't
to draw. The Winx were returning to Magic Land. And thankfully, the very next day, that conclusion was confirmed to be correct. with a second follow-up post by Magic Land reading, "A whole season of fun awaits you at Magic Land, and a long-awaited return, the new Winx-themed attraction." Over the following weeks, Magic Land continued to vaguely tease Winx's return, before finally, in a February press release, they announced that the new Winx attraction would actually be the return of Pianeta Winx, slightly updated and with the new name Magic Winx. And so, on the 12th of April 2025, on a dedicated Winx-themed day, Winx Club officially returned to Magic Land, with the opening of the Magic Winx ride, which was almost identical to its 2011 counterpart. There were some minor changes to the attraction sets and lighting, as well as a newly added scene featuring Daphne from the 2025 reboot, but otherwise the ride was Pianeta Winx as fans remembered it. The flower-themed ride vehicles and the ride's layout remained unchanged, as did the story, audio, and iconic statues of the Winx, with the exception of Flora missing her wings. However, there were some more noticeable changes to the ride's queue. During the attraction's 2020 rebrand, the cage structure had already been replaced with a lush forest setting, but now there was also updated signage, televisions playing episodes of Winx Club, and most notably, brand new statues of the Winx redesigned to match their appearances in the 2025 reboot. For many fans, the attraction was of course exciting and nostalgic, yet at the same time, it was kind of bittersweet. Because yes, the Winx had returned, but fans couldn't help but miss what hadn't. The Winx walk-around characters, the live shows, the Pop Pixie rides, and above all else, Althea, which is where the story of the Winx theme park takes a bit of a turn. On the 26th of May 2025, YouTuber and content creator known online as Jamie Magicworld and Belgian Winx Club visited Magic Land to experience the newly reopened Winx attraction. But while exploring the park, he noticed something unexpected. Cosmo Academy, the building that had replaced Althea Castle years earlier, didn't quite hold up to scrutiny. He found that much of Cosmo Academy was still the original Althea Castle, simply repainted grey. And what's more, from certain angles, traces of the original colour scheme was still visible behind trees and fences. This could have easily been brushed off as Magic Land cutting corners when it came to transforming Althea into Cosmo Academy. After all, they had been in financial strain. But the more Jamie looked, the clearer it became that this went far beyond just a rushed retheme, because most of Althea Castle was still there. As it turned out, the entry to Cosmo Academy was nothing more than a false wall, and behind it sat the original Althea structure almost entirely intact. In fact, as guests walked through the narrow passageway leading to the planetarium, those who stopped and looked closely could still see Althea through the makeshift tunnel walls.
Ain't no fucking way!
Jamie was actually able to go behind Cosmo's fake wall and explore the now deserted Althea, where he found that Believix era signage and the shop's interior, including original shelves and props, were all still present.
It's still
covered
there.
in weeds, dust, and dirt, but still there. The Winx theme park hadn't been demolished. It had simply been abandoned. So in a way, the Winx theme park still exists. And maybe, like Pianeta Winx, it's just waiting for the chance to return. Winx Club is often remembered as just another silly Y2K cartoon that came and quickly went.
Shut up, leave my Y2K cartoon alone, I like that cartoon!
Story. Not many animated shows get their own amusement park ride, let alone a whole dedicated land. And yet, Winx Club did.
Guys.
Amusement park ride.
Guys.
Let alone
Nickelodeon Universe. What do you guys think? What do you think if we went there?
A whole dedicated land. And yet, Winx Club did. Even now in its abandoned state, the Winx Club theme park stands as proof of just how significant the Winx franchise was, and arguably still is. Moreover, it represents a moment in time where an Italian animated series, one that was designed with young girls as the primary audience, became powerful enough to anchor an entire theme park. A moment where Six Fairies allowed a small animation studio to stand shoulder to shoulder with global entertainment powerhouses. So if nothing else, I hope the story of the Winx theme park is a reminder that Winx Club was a phenomenon powerful enough to leave a physical footprint. One that to this day may be abandoned, but will never be completely erased.
Wow! Wow!
Also, here's a fun little story for you, but one of the first TikToks I ever posted that blew up was a video of me talking about the Winx theme park, and like a year after I posted it, Magic Land actually DM'd me asking me to make a video about the new Winx ride because it was like just about to open, I think, and I was on a big social media break at the time, so I never responded. Magic Land, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to ghost you, and I also never made the video technically until now, but the point that I'm getting to is that Magic Land PR team, if you are watching this, when I inevitably go back to Italy and I inevitably go to Magic Land because I want to ride the Winx ride, please, I am literally begging you, I will pay you, I will pay. But please let me see the abandoned Althea. I will do anything. I will give my life.
She'll do anything. She'll give her life.
I will sacrifice myself in the courtyard if I have to.
She'll give her life for Althea. I wish I could see Winx. Dun 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 dun.